Hey y'all, today we're making a king cake. Okay, so down here in the South, we love us a king cake at Mardi Gras time, so I figured I would show y'all how I make mine. So to start off with, you're going to need 1 cup of warm milk. I just put mine in the microwave for about 45 seconds, and that gets it just where I need it to be. So then you're going to add in about a teaspoon of sugar, and we're going to add in 2 1/4 teaspoons of active dry yeast, or that's 1 packet if you use the packets, okay? So add that in there, and your warm milk and your sugar are just going to help activate your yeast because yeast loves warmth and it loves sugar. So that's why I added that in there at this step. So I just mixed it up. We're going to let that sit 5 or 10 minutes until it gets nice and foamy on top, okay? If it doesn't foam up like that, your yeast is probably not any good and you're going to need to start over because it's not going to rise if your yeast is dead, okay? So to my bowl, I'm adding a 1/2 cup of sugar, and then I'm going to add in 4 cups of plain all-purpose flour. I'm going to end up using a total of 5, but I always start with 4 and then add the other as I'm mixing it, just little by little. So then I added in 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt, and then you're just going to mix that up really good just to make sure all those dry ingredients, get good and incorporated together. Then we're going to pour in our yeast mixture that we fixed up, and then we're going to add in 2 room temperature eggs. And if you forget to take them out of the refrigerator to let them come to room temp, just sit them in a bowl of hot water for about 10 minutes, and that will bring them to room temp for you. So add that all in your bowl. You're going to add to that 6 tablespoons of softened butter. And I did let mine sit out, but it wasn't quite soft enough, so I popped it in the microwave for 10 seconds. It doesn't need to go any longer than that. So then we're going to put this on our mixer, and we're going to let this mix with our dough hook for about 8 to 10 minutes. And then once this part mixes in, I slowly add that 5th cup of flour. You may not need the whole 5th cup, so just add a little bit at a time. We're going to want to mix this, like I said, about 8 to 10 minutes or until it is a little bit tacky, but it doesn't stick to your hands, okay? That's where we want it to be. Now, a lot of people make king cakes a lot of different ways. This is just the way that I make mine. We like it this way, but you can absolutely find any kind of recipe you want. I'm not going to put anything in the middle of this one. A lot of people do stuff them. I'm not going to do it this time, but I'm going to put a cream cheese frosting on it or a cream cheese icing on it instead of putting my cream cheese in the middle. And that way you still get the flavor, but you don't have to worry about, trying to figure out how to get the cream cheese in the center without it going everywhere. So now once our dough is ready, like I said, you want it kind of tacky, but it won't stick to your hands. You're going to take a bowl, spray it with a little bit of cooking spray, or rub it with some butter, or rub oil on it, whatever you want to use. And then you're going to put your dough ball right down into that bowl, and then make sure that you put a little bit of oil on the top of it as well, so it won't stick if it rises. If it rises, up to what you cover it with. So we're going to put that in there. I'm just kind of shaping it into a ball. We're going to put it in our bowl, and we're going to cover this up. I use like a little food grade shower cap looking thing for mine. You can throw a towel over it. You can put some saran wrap over it, whatever you have. And then I put mine in the oven with the light on, but the oven off. Okay, don't turn the oven on, but turn the light on. And you're going to let it sit there for about 1.5 to 2 hours. Okay, it needs to sit for a while. We need this to double in size. Okay, so now that our dough is nice and doubled, you're going to want to punch that air out of it, or just, you don't have to punch it, but it's kind of fun. But just kind of poke the air out of it. I just kind of roll it in on itself a little bit. And I have this piece of parchment paper down here because in my mind I was thinking, well, I'll just do everything on the parchment paper, knowing good and darn well this piece of parchment paper is not big enough to roll this dough out on. But I'm going to keep that piece of parchment paper. We're going to use it in a minute. So I got my trusty silicone mat. Y'all know this is in my Amazon store. I will try to remember to link it down below for y'all if you're looking for one. It is fantastic if you have like these tile countertops, or even if you have flat countertops but you don't want to roll your dough out on your countertop. So we're going to roll this out. There's not really a set measurement it needs to be, but you need to roll it out till it's about 1/4 of an inch thick. It needs to be pretty thin, but you don't want it so thin that it rips. So just keep going until you get something similar to this, a big old rectangle, okay? So now I am going to take my pizza cutter and cut right down the center long ways, like you see me doing. And we're going to do this in 2 pieces because we're going to sort of braid it. And it's not really a braid, it's more of a twist. But that's the way we're going to do ours. You could just roll this whole solid sheet up and just make it into a circle yourself, without twisting it. But I just think the twist looks kind of pretty. So what we're going to do now, if you haven't figured this out yet, if you've been following me for a while, this is actually my cinnamon roll recipe. So this is the same exact way I make my cinnamon rolls. We're just going to do it in a cake form, okay, rather than the individual cinnamon rolls. So now I'm going to take some butter. So this is our filling part. You're going to need about 4 tablespoons of soft butter, and you're going to rub that all over each one of your pieces of dough, but make sure you leave an edge. You see like the kind of rounded parts where I didn't put any butter, because we want to be able to seal this. So we need that little dry piece of dough, if that makes sense. So then I'm adding on, I used probably about 3/4 cup of brown sugar. This is homemade brown sugar. It's delicious. And then I just add on some cinnamon. I'll give y'all some measurements down in the description box in the recipe, but I do not ever measure this. So I just do it till what looks right to me, but I will give you some measurements if you're new to doing stuff like this and you don't feel comfortable eyeballing it. So then we're going to start at the edge, away from the edge that we left bare, if that makes sense. You can see how I'm doing it. And we're just going to roll that into a log and pinch those seams together the very best that you can. You need to make sure everything is sealed up, and you're going to see why in a minute, because I'm leaving all my mistakes in here today. So now what you're going to do, again, me and this parchment paper, I lined my baking sheet with parchment paper because that's what I'm going to bake this on. However, these were way too long to start it out on the parchment paper, but I'm going to do it anyway because, I'm a rebel. So I stuck it on the parchment paper. It's so big, y'all. It's going to fit, I promise. So then I press the ends together, and then I just twist each piece over each other. And then I twist it into a circle, or do it in some sort of an oval or whatever you want to do. And then pinch the ends together the best you can. And you can see right there what I'm fixing, where it kind of started coming apart again. Pinch everything together that you can, because I'm going to lose some filling in a minute, you'll see. But that's the reason why my seams split. So, you got to just be very careful to seal those. Then you're going to let that sit in the oven with the light on and rise for about another hour and a half until it doubles in size as well. And then I'm just going back and pinching together the little pieces that kind of came apart as it was rising. But again, because I should have paid more attention and made sure all of the seam was always down on the paper, you know what I mean? But I didn't. And that's why I lose a little filling. So now we're going to bake this at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 30 minutes. And that is what it's going to look like when it comes out. Hopefully yours won't bust. But that right there that I'm showing y'all is my filling that kind of seeped out a little bit. It's still delicious. It still tastes really good. It's fine. But just know that that may happen if your seams are not sealed together good. So it's nice and brown. And you can see right there where that seam busted. Anyway, we're going to let this sit now until it cools down completely. Because if we try to ice it now, the icing is just going to run off of it because it is so hot, okay? So I'm showing y'all all of my mistakes there, so y'all won't make those same mistakes. All right, so now that we have, it's cooled completely down, We're going to put this on. I'm putting this as like a charger. I'm just going to pick this up. I end up having to get a spatula to get it up because I didn't want it to fall apart on me when I was picking it up and just knock my little crusty brown sugar off there. But you're just going to move your cake over to a whatever serving dish, platter, you know, whatever if you're going to serve it on the cookie sheet, you can just leave it right there. But I was trying to make it pretty for y'all. All right, so now that we have that done, we are going to ice this thing. So for your icing, like I said, I'm doing a cream cheese icing. If you don't want cream cheese icing, you can look up a different kind of icing, like a glaze or something if you want to put that on the top. But I like the cream cheese icing. So what I have in my bowl is 2 tablespoons of soft butter. And then I'm going to add to that 4 ounces or half of this block of cream cheese. And you need to make sure that your butter is room temperature and that your cream cheese is also room temperature, because it's going to make your life a whole lot easier when you're trying to mix this up, okay? So, like I said, 2 tablespoons of softened butter. Now, if you want a lot more icing, then you can absolutely make more. If you don't want as much, then you can back off a little bit. You can adjust things. And I know one of y'all commented that y'all hate when I tell y'all to do whatever you want to do. I'm giving you my recipe, but I'm also letting you know there are other options. That's all I'm doing when I say stuff like that. So you're going to mix your cream cheese and butter together. You can use a mixer for this if you want to, but if it's soft enough, you really don't need one. So then I added in about a teaspoon of vanilla. And then we're going to slowly add in 3/4 of a cup of powdered sugar, and just add a little bit at a time, only because it makes it a lot easier to mix it if you don't dump the entire thing in there at once. So I do about half, and then once I get it mixed in, then I do the other half. Y'all saw that hand over there poking my cake. Anyway, I thought this was a little bit thicker than I wanted it, so I'm going to add probably about a teaspoon, maybe a tablespoon of milk. If your icing is a little thicker than you want it, add just a tiny bit of milk, you know, a little at a time until you get it to the consistency that you want it. Now, I did want it to hold together. I didn't want it to just run off of my cake. I did want it sort of thick, but I didn't want it as thick as it was. So that's why I added just a tiny bit of milk, and you can see how much the consistency changed just with that little tiny bit of milk. So once we get that all done, we get it where we want it, we're just going to rub this on the top of our cake. So spread it out as evenly as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't matter if there are little gaps, you want it to be covered so your sprinkles will stick to it, but it doesn't matter if it's not a solid block of icing. You see what I'm saying? Like if you have a little bit of cake peeking through, it's fine. So you're just going to get it covered the best that you can to where, your cake is covered, and 2, you have something for your sprinkles to stick to. Now, I am using, what is it called? Like colored sugar? Is that what it is? The sugar, little sugar crystals? But you can use whatever sprinkles you want. You can throw some Mardi Gras beads on here. Now, if you want to put a baby in here, which is kind of traditional, you put a baby in the king cake. If you want to do that before you ice it. Just flip your cake upside down and shove the baby up into the cake from the bottom. You don't want to bake the plastic baby inside the cake. At least I don't. I don't want to end up with a little melted baby in my cake. But anyway, then you're just going to go around and put your purple, green, and gold, or in my case, yellow, sprinkles on until you get it all covered. And now you have a beautiful and delicious little Mardi Gras cake. So I hope that y'all enjoyed this video. I hope that you're going to make a king cake for yourself this year. And I will catch y'all on the next one. Bye, y'all.